Hey everyone, what's up, what's up? Thanks for joining me in this conversation. I am currently putting together a little bit of content around how I think it would be beneficial to both showcase some of the great things that Jordan Peterson's talking about, as well as critique some of them and try and bring the people together, try and be the glue for the people. So I want to start out by saying that the first thing is that Jordan and I are friends. I hosted Jordan Peterson in San Francisco in February in a fireside chat. Jordan has done a great job at going and inspiring people around the world to do things like join the Future Authoring Program. That's such a crucial thing, to be able to want to set yourself up with goals and go and follow through on those goals. Other things like cleaning up your own room before critiquing the world, clean yourself up first. Other things like showcasing the good in religion. Other things like understanding your shadow. He's been a huge proponent of these things, especially through his psychology and his clinical practice, his professing. He's gotten a lot of experience, and he's been able to really help catalyze a lot of great impact through that. Other things that we think are really important that he's helped with are the social development in children, and making sure that parents do know that that's a really important thing to do. And of course, be better than yesterday. Yourself, be better yourself than yesterday, not comparing to other people, but to yourself yesterday. So all these things are fantastic, and I think that a lot of people are identifying them as great things. There are certain aspects to the nuance, to all the variables that are missing in the conversation. For example, let's talk about this one. And this is one that we had a challenge video with, again, challenging Ruben and Candace Owens and Charlie Kirk when we were talking to them about being more equanimous, more open-minded, and having more of these variables in conversation. For example, and this is again a part of the intellectual dark web, doing a fantastic job but missing a couple of these links, and I want to try and be the glue here. So one of the main ones is that even though the whole notion of picking yourself up and bringing yourself forth into the world is so important, we don't have a really solid social fabric for unfortunate areas. So let me give you an example. There's a ton of people that are in South Chicago or in South Boston or in Compton or all these different areas of not only the US but also abroad in Africa and Asia and other places. So it's across the world. There are these pockets of social fabric where we can have better access to technology, better access to ubiquity in energy, ubiquity in food and water. And as we do that, we enable people to self-actualize better. We build out the infrastructure around people to get them to better make value on the world, better figure themselves out and make impact on the world. It's more difficult for them to get out of violence and to get out of the limitations that when they don't have a computer, they can't program, they can't design, they can't do these things. So it's up to us collectively to both understand it's our own impact on ourselves, that we got to pick ourselves up and go forth, but also that we got to build a better social fabric for areas of the world to uplift everyone collectively. And so that's part of the glue that I think is missing right there in the conversation that needs to be had. Also, that if we look at it in terms of a hierarchy, in terms of people that have less socioeconomic status at the bottom and more socioeconomic status at the top, the people at the top are just able to, and this is AKA zip code literature. Zip code literature is very, very well known. So you're born into a certain area that has high socioeconomic status, you're much more likely to be able to catalyze self-actualization than if you're in poor and you're still looking for food, you're still looking for water, you're still unsure about your shelter, that type of stuff. So in this example, if you're at the top of the SES, you have a higher path forward, a faster path forward. At the bottom, you have a slower path forward. It's more difficult for you to get forward. So what tools and resources can we provide to our fellow humans, because we are all human? What can we do to help catalyze their self-actualization faster? We've had the privilege to go to places like the South End Tech Center in Boston, where Mel King and Susan Klimczak have specifically focused their time on figuring out how to put more resources into an unfortunate, underprivileged area to empower children to get access to Sketch and Scratch, MIT's programming language, block-based programming language, all these robotic parts, all these different Arduinos and computer parts that enable them to play with technology and enables them to go to colleges like Princeton from areas that was much more difficult to do so. So they are able to then impact 700 elementary and middle school kids per year. They're teaching other high schoolers how to teach younger kids. So it's this beautiful cycle. So you see how there are these things that exist that we can really get much better at doing in order to bring everybody up at the same time as telling them like, hey, it's up to you. Like you yourself got to pick yourself up at the same time. So those two things being pushed together. And it's not just underprivileged and unfortunate, and it's not just about skin color, it's also about rural areas. There are plenty of rural areas of like Australia, for example, where it's white kids that don't have access to the different technologies. And so what First Robotics and the Thunder Down Under, which is a team in First Robotics, they've went to rural areas of Australia where it's white young kids that don't have access to robotics, and they've provided them with access to this technology to get them to play with it and get them more actualized, get them the access to these tools, putting them on their tool belt. So it's not about skin color. It's about access to technology and access to helping people, building a stronger social fabric for everyone on the planet. Okay. So that's that, and then that's one of the ways that I think the glue can come together stronger between people, and I want to help be that glue. Again, I want to help be that glue. Another thing that I think is really important to talk about right now is that as the people at the top again of the hierarchy, as we're looking at the top of the hierarchy, we have a lot of people do have, they have walls up. They have big walls up because there's a lot of people trying to snake their way in and do malevolent things. And that's not okay to do that. We got to really stop doing that because otherwise these walls get higher and it's hard for benevolent people to try and get in and collaborate with people that are at the top. So I think that it's becoming more difficult at times for benevolent people to try and work together with people that are a little bit higher up on the hierarchy to try and collaborate. A really good example is whenever you reach out to somebody that has a little bit of clout, typically they're not responding to you unless you're providing them with a lot of value. Maybe they see that you have high integrity or that you're highly genuine or that you have a high authenticity, all these things. Then and only then will they work back together with you. So it's really important this leads directly, I want to lead this into the next point, which is about what's happening with these stages. On stages in front of thousands, 2,000s, 3,000s of people, we have either one person giving a monologue or we have armchairs where people are talking. So I think that it's really important to have interlocutors that are able to do a good job at challenging the person that is on stage. Now, that doesn't mean being rude, that doesn't mean doing things that bring that person down. It is being playful, it's being kind, it's actively listening, paraphrasing, steel manning their arguments, and then saying, hey, what about this aspect to it? What if we add that to it? What if I challenge you a bit here and nudge you a bit? What are your thoughts on that? So I think it's really important to have an interlocutor on stage rather than a monologue a lot of the time. And I think it's important for us to figure out who are these people that are trying to come up and make these challenges. Why are they trying to make them to be the glue? Are they trying to do something else? So that then, okay, here's something else to keep in mind. That careers are important and kids are important. And I think this is something that Jordan addresses a lot, which is that having kids is so important. Don't miss your window to have kids. They're really playful, they're fun, it's a great opportunity to mold kids into the world. I totally agree that that's an important aspect of life. At the same time, I think men and women equally, even women, can find self-actualization and meaning in life by impacting the world in ways that are not having kids, by starting companies that bring lots of value to the world, by having missions and purposes that do things like make the world a better place for civilizations to come. You don't need to do that directly through a child. You can do that through a project that you found and that you work on. So I just want to make that clear that it's totally possible to do it through a project as well, and not just through children. So keep that totally open. And then that being eccentric is crucial. There's so much pressure on us now to conform and fit into a certain cycle of work. You fit into a regiment of 8 hours of sleep, 8 hours of work, 8 hours of play. You sleep from midnight until 8 a.m. We all do the certain things that everybody else does. And that's actually creating, there are certain aspects to that that are right. Like for sure, try and get 8 hours of sleep every single night. What's important, why we sleep, really important. But also figure out what works for you to build your mission and your impact in the world. If you need to stay up a little bit later and wake up a little bit later a couple days, then do that so that you can focus. Be eccentric, be different. It's not just about sleep, it's about your behavior in the outside world. It's not about going and running around on the streets naked and yelling really loudly to be different, but it's more things like when you see everybody at an event that's having small talk, try and walk up to people and ask them really deep questions really quickly. What are you passionate about? What do you care about? What are your values? And just try and get deep into people as quickly as possible to figure out who are these people that you want to surround yourself with, that you want to make connections with quickly. So be the black sheep. Go the way that other people aren't going more often. Be eccentric. Don't follow that path that everybody follows all the time. Okay, sometimes go the other path. Now, this is an important challenge. I've tried talking to Jordan about this. I haven't gotten an answer. But in rule number 8, tell the truth or at least don't lie. One thing that I'd like to challenge that with is, what if you are hiding Jews in your house during World War II? Then what? And you have the Nazis come to your door and they say, are you hiding Jews? And then do you tell the truth or do you lie? Let that sink in for a moment. So what do we do in that case? So I just want to bring these questions up again as an interlocutor, just trying to challenge, just trying to play and see what the answers are to these interestingly nuanced and multivariate questions. And we're staying equanimous. That's so important. We're trying to express love and empathy for all people and all perspectives, but also to figure out how to bring the glue together and move forward as one and not shatter us apart with the polarization that's currently existing. So we'd like to help out with that. Maybe there's some sort of layer of scientific objective truth, even though religion does bring us a lot of that, as Jordan says, a lot of this morality and this actualization that we have. So does science. Science tells us that the Earth orbits the star. It tells us about the molecular composition of water. It tells us about our heart beating about 100,000 times a day. All these things, maybe we can build some foundational objective layers of truth that we can teach children and progress forward as a planet with together. So this direct message, again, just to remind you, Jordan and I are friends. He's done a great job inspiring people around the world. And I want to make that very clear that I just want to see aspects of him and the intellectual dark web be slightly more nuanced, more equanimous, multivariate, that there are people like me and other people that want to add a little bit of challenges to it, maybe to be the glue that loops the people together that are currently polarized. How can we bring them together and move forward? That's a lot of what I care about. I really appreciate you tuning in to listen to this direct message about what's going on in the world, and especially regards to what's going on with Jordan Peterson and the intellectual dark web and the things that I can hopefully help us with. So join me in wanting to do that. Join us with this project simulation as we ask really thought-provoking questions to people, as we highlight leaders across science and entrepreneurship. And huge thank you again. And if you had a good time with this video, please give it a share. Give the video a share. Give a comment below with your thoughts. Give us a subscribe. Join us in the movement. and we'd love to hear your thoughts and move forward together. Let's get it. Tweet the video at Jordan and at a couple of the other intellectual dark web folks, Eric Weinstein, Dave Rubin, Candace Owens. Get it out there to some of them. Joe Rogan. Let's see if we can get them involved in this conversation and stay very equanimous, multivariate, playful, but also looking forward and trying to build a better world together. So thank you very much. Really appreciate it. And I've also had the pleasure of having Guy Sangstock here throughout this. Guy's a very close friend of mine, the founder of the Circling Institute, and he has been crucial in wanting to bring forth really beautiful strategies for authenticity and transformation in the world. And so I would like to open it up to see if Guy has anything that was that he thought had an impact. There was an interlocutor here. What did you think about the direct message, and were there things that you think that you could move me on, that you can challenge me on as well?
I want to become clear about what I'm actually hearing you correctly.
Yeah.
So one of the last things that you said, that your intention here is to be the glue, right? Is that to bring more people into the conversation?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Now, how you're doing that is through challenge. You're challenging some of his ideas. And what I really like about what you said is that you're doing it in a way such that you're respecting the human being. You're not like assuming the human being is some way, but you're basically saying like you're respecting the human being, that they have a right to think what they think, and that you fundamentally say that that's good. And so you're making the distinction between the human being and what they say and their ideas, and you're laying that out. That is like, I think that's essential, and I think that's one of the biggest things missing.
Yeah.
But what do you make of this connection between bringing people together by challenging them? Mm-hmm. Well, how does that work? How does that work?
Yeah. I'm happy that you brought that first point up, which was that humans and then their ideas.
Yeah.
And so respecting all 7.5 billion humans just for being human, and then whatever their ideas are on top of that, how can you steel man conversations to help build a better world together? Not straw man, not manipulate people, but have really strong, thought-provoking conversations. Mm-hmm. Now, in the bringing people together and being the glue, it's like a collaborational challenging. So it's like when a tennis ball is hit your way, you add your own thoughts to the tennis ball and hit it back in a way that adds some spin, and then the other person receives that tennis ball that might have a little bit more spin, so it's more difficult for them to hit back, but it's much easier, it's much better for the world to have a tennis ball be hit over that has some spin on it that's harder to hit back than it is to just hit up a volley and make it super easy for them to hit the tennis ball back. That doesn't make for interesting conversation. When you have volleys going back and forth, people are like, yeah, we've heard all of this stuff. But when you hit the ball back with some spin on it, make it a little bit more difficult for the person sitting in the armchair across from you to hit it back. It's more unique, it's more novel. So it's a collaborational challenging. It's a playful challenging. It's a friendly challenge. It's a progressing challenge, one that's focused on societal prospering. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, so if you were to bring up a difference, right, and if we actually had the glue, or if I were to bring up a difference, and what are you supposed to do with that difference or that spin? Like, why is it good to have the spin? Like, is it so that you can think the thoughts I'm thinking? Is it so you can see your own thoughts as they are? What's important about that?
So when you hit the ball back to me with some spin, then why is that good for the conversation? Yeah. So when you hit it back with spin on it, I am then usually introduced to something that is more novel.
Yeah.
And so when I'm introduced to something that's more novel, it makes me think in a way that I might not have thought before, and then it kind of gets me to manifest some sort of a perspective that I might not have thought before. And if that's happening live on camera or live in an audience, that's a really good way for people to be like, I don't know. That's a really good point. And for people to say things like, I don't know, that's a sign of vulnerability. That's a sign of totally being okay with not knowing.
Yeah.
And that's a very beautiful thing.
Yeah.
And we can come up with a slight thought about, that would be like kind of like, almost like whiffing on the tennis ball and being like, hey, it's totally okay that I whiffed on that tennis ball that had a lot of spin on it, because it's a really difficult question to answer.
Yeah.
When we sit here on the show and we ask people about what do we do about globalization, what do we do about wealth inequality, how do we progress together as a civilization, it's a really difficult question to answer. It has trillions of variables, so it's one that it's difficult to hit back. So that novelty that you add, spin, if I can form something about it saying, I don't know, but here's something that I think might help us together,
right,
then that's so valuable, way more valuable than a volley is for the other person.
So I think what I'm hearing you say is that basically, if we have conversations where I'm not trying to be right, but I'm trying to converse. In other words, like a lot of times I notice that I find out what I think through finding out what I end up saying in the conversation. So a lot of times I start to articulate my ideas in the act of the conversation. Yeah. And sometimes that's like really good news. Sometimes that's like, oh, whoa, I didn't even think of that. So there's this element I just want to bring in of like, well, why don't people do that already? And I think it goes back to what I heard Jordan Peterson say one time. He's like, when you truly learn something new, if it's really you're really learning something new, it means that you need to unlearn something else. The process of learning something new is also the process of unlearning something else. And our biases, right, our well-cherished ideas, we get irritated when they're challenged, right? Because we step on top of our presuppositions.
Yes.
So like, I just want to say that like, it takes a kind of courage to step into a forum in which I'm voluntarily open to die in a certain way. I'm open to like let go of an idea, even some of my most precious ideas. And that's, I think just that the demonstration of that courage is already a message.
Yes, I love that. The true beauty of saying that what I had as an idea before actually has fault to it, and I want to push that idea to the side now. Yeah. I want to move forward with this other idea, and being totally vulnerable and open about it to the public and saying things like, hey, I actually did think this way, it was wrong, I've moved on. We've seen actually a decent amount of that in the news nowadays, is people saying that, yeah, I used to think that, I think this now, I think it's better now for these reasons, and being totally open, vulnerable, and loving in that transition. And then you asked about this importance of having an outstanding conversation, knowing how to converse with people. And this has been something that we talked to Jordan about when he was here in San Francisco, is the art of an outstanding conversation, how to actually do this. This, I think, boils down to a couple things. Like you said, it's about the dialogue and the conversing, first and foremost. It's not about trying to win. You are not trying to win. It's about the conversation, it's about the dialogue. Then when there's certain aspects to that, like these objective things, like your heart is the thing that's beating and keeping you alive. And if someone's like, no, it's not, then it's like, hey, okay, let's revisit this. Let's figure out how to help you figure this out. Now, for example, with these main principles that we need to keep in mind to have a great conversation, we need to stay open-minded. We need to be an active listener. We need to listen more than we talk. We need to ask really good questions. Right. And if we feel the person's diverging and going on a tangent, just ask them, hey, can you pause? I just want to bring us back quick. So there's all these different strategies that you can do. Also, having a lot of nuance in conversation, covering all of the variables. Political issues are not binary issues. Science is binary, like gravity existing on the face of the earth at a certain meters per second square pull down. So that is binary, politics is not. So all these different layers and nuance, totally being equanimous, being chill and loving and caring and open-minded as you converse with them. So that's this art of outstanding conversation, and trying to bring that to more people around the world is something so important, especially as we try and design civilization, build our future together.
The other thing I heard you say so much I could say about that in my own experience, but I also want to talk about what you talked about. I think implicitly you talked about with the hierarchy, right? The competence hierarchy. It used to be called the dominance hierarchy. I think what I basically heard you say is that the people at the top, right, have a responsibility to make sure that the people at the bottom have equal opportunity, basically. And so where your attention, what I heard you say is like where your attention goes is like if somebody's at the top and they have walls around them and they're not open to like other ideas or something like that, that seem to presuppose the other side of that they're not going to necessarily be in service of the bottom of the hierarchy. And it does seem to be like a natural, what natural hierarchies do are there so that the most amount of competence, right, at the top can then look at the bottom and then figure out how do we get the bottom to have the most opportunity.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. I'm happy that you brought this back up because it awakened another thought in me that we should communicate, which is that the current state of what exists in human socioeconomic status sorting by a hierarchy is now a period of a couple million years of evolution, especially the last couple 100,000 and last 1,000, especially as money has come into our lives and we figured out the people at the top have the access to the most technology, the most highest shelters, highest foods, highest these things, healthcares, etc. So then is it their responsibility to look down and figure it out, being the most competent and try and lift everybody up? This is a very, very difficult question. Evolution actually has been an insane trajectory that has bifurcated, trifurcated, made genetic variations, and along the way usually has the top lobster, the top human winning in the cases, always getting the best. The top keeps getting the best. The top keeps getting the best, keeps getting the best. So are we going to continue with this trajectory of the top getting the best, and then the bottom kind of coming up but also dying at the same time, coming up and dying until there's a speciation or until some sort of a split potentially occurs between the wealth? Or will we figure out how to take the competence at the top and figure out how to uplift everyone collectively more strongly over time?
Here's the thing I want to cut into a little bit with that.
Yeah.
So when you say lift up, so we're looking, like I'm at the top of the hierarchy, right? I'm looking down and like I want to create opportunities for them to come up. Where's the responsibility of the person at the top? Is it to lift up, or is it to give the opportunity for them or the means such that if they want to be lifted up, they can lift up? Like where does the lifting up happen?
Yeah, that's the complicated question. Funneling money down, handouts, figuring out how to do things like the South End Tech Center with providing computers and resources for kids to come in and play with and get inspired by seems to be doing pretty good.
Right.
Kids are getting into great colleges. They're able to pursue careers that are really impactful and meaningful. So that's really interesting. So I tend to gravitate towards that. And then furthermore, how do we make that better? I don't know. I would love to figure out how to make that better.
So I think, first of all, like as you were talking, I was like, you know what? I feel a sense of security just in the fact that we're asking the question.
Yeah.
Right? Like I think that's probably the biggest thing is to be asking the question, because a hierarchy is a hierarchy because we haven't completed it yet. Like otherwise there wouldn't be a hierarchy if we weren't going somewhere, right? So we're on our way to something that seems to presuppose a hierarchy or a telos or a purpose that we're constantly just finding out even what that is, right? So where I personally years ago had an experience of a real question that just spontaneously happened for me is I used to live over on Bay and Taylor in San Francisco, and I moved here to go to art school, and I went to the San Francisco Art Institute, which is this like, I'm still in debt from that thing. It's like this really intense art school that it costs like 20 grand back then a year to go through. And my parents didn't have any money. I didn't come from a whole bunch of money. And I figured out how to get myself in there and like work it out and pay for it and all that kind of stuff. Yep. And I'm sitting on, I'm sitting outside my window, looking across the street, which was back then it was the Bay Street projects. And I'm looking down and I'm looking at a group of like the drug dealers that are, you know, selling crack and stuff, right, where the, you know, the cars come down. And I started thinking about this, and I was like, you know what? I bet in terms of opportunity, I would imagine, like, and I don't actually literally know if this is true. I'm just speculating. But I was thinking about if one of them wanted to go and do what I was doing, I bet they actually have more opportunities than I do, like government funding, you know, subsidizing, all those kinds of things. And I probably have like less money than they do, right? And I'm going there. What is the difference between that? Like, what is the difference that made that difference where they actually have more opportunity than I do, speculatively? What is the difference between me like moving in that direction and taking up and not? That's a big question. What do you think of it?
As you look out the window and you see people dealing drugs, there's a tendency for me to want to think that, like, what led them to that point, and then what opportunities do they have now. Their opportunities are very vast, like you described. There are actually a lot of opportunities. They just got to figure out how to pit themselves into those opportunities. Whereas with what you were doing, you were already going down a track. Your opportunities already became narrowed because you went down a track, and now they're going to blossom out again as you finish that track and figure out where to go with them. So opportunity is a very interesting thing. We do not talk about equal outcome. We talk about equal opportunity and the importance of that. Yeah. And so figuring out how to do that for people that are both deciding to go through school, that are not going through school, for people that are in the low economic brackets versus the higher, how do we make that happen moving forward? One of the most challenging questions of our lifetime in the next 100 years is how do we work together across all the socioeconomic statuses to move forward together, or will there be a split? And so that kind of a question is one that I think let's end the conversation with. Let's hopefully other people will wanna share that conversation, that aspect of the conversation especially. Everyone, again, Guy, thank you for coming and helping me out here. I appreciate it. Thank you, Ron Vargas, our producing partner, for doing this. We really appreciate everyone for tuning in. If you guys, again, if you had a good time thinking about some of the things that we've been talking about, share the content with other people, subscribe, join us, comment below with your thoughts. We'd love to hear them. And let's get more of this thought-provoking discourse going on. Let's be the glue of bringing people together through this collaboration, these challenging thoughts around each other, and much love. Thank you, everyone.
Cool.